Okay, we are live.
Okay, good afternoon and welcome back everyone for day 2 of our annual operating budget review. And just for the record, I'm going to ask Sarah if we could please check on attendance.
Baylor,
Aye.
Connor,
Aye.
Freeman,
Aye.
Busco, Kamer, Lombardo,
Aye.
McKittrick,
Aye.
Malik,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Amobian, Samples, Somerville,
Aye.
and Swirsky. Okay, all members are present at the moment except for Fusco, Hamer, Amobian, Samples, and Swirsky.
Okay, very good. Let me start out by saying thank you for a good day yesterday. At the offset, we had asked, if we could please just confine our questions to budgetary questions. And for the most part, we did a good job at that. I think there was some good information offered up. I think there were some good questions too. And I went away feeling it was a productive day yesterday. So we are going to begin today, and I believe that the first thing that we have on our agenda today is we're going to hear from City Council today, from our legislative branch. So who will be starting us off, please?
I'll be starting there, Mr. Freeman.
Thank you.
Okay, as usual, we're going to be short and sweet, at least I hope so. But our 2020 goals and objectives, we continue to strive towards a paperless council meeting. And in all honesty, I never thought this could happen, but it's almost there. We don't use near the paper we used to even 5 years ago. So it's coming around. I don't know what happens if you got to make a note on something and we're paperless, but it's we're getting there because we don't order probably 20% of the paper we used to order a few years back. We're going to replace for the record on the recording software that captures the audio of the meeting. Sarah, you want to explain that for us?
That was one of our 2020 goals, but it was one of those things that was determined that may not need to be done. Now that we are live streaming on YouTube and consistently, we're looking into whether we need to do a separate audio recording as well. So we're not finalized on that. Again, it was a 2020 goal, but it's something that we are still looking into whether it really needs to be done for 2021.
Okay. Number 3 is make a strong effort to have new legislation available to council members by 3 p.m. on Friday. I know a lot of times that's almost impossible depending on laws, looking up something for a particular piece of legislation. But I would have to say Sarah and Holly have done a great job making 95% of the legislation ready for council to review on Friday afternoon. So it's come a long, long way. Years ago, that never existed. We got it Monday morning at 10 o'clock. So that has changed. On our 2020 accomplishments, conducted council meetings virtually and minimized paper copies as needed. So that's another version of we're going paperless. Number 2, we worked hard to get legislation to council members prior to the end of the business day on Friday. So, I mean, we're close. And sometimes it's, they're like I said, having trouble in a law department putting it all together. And that's not uncommon, I don't think, because sometimes legislation is requested at the last minute. So our 2021 goals are to assess all our technology utilized by staff and make the upgrades as needed. And number 2, assist council in working towards a plan to safely return to in-person meetings on committees and council. I can't say when that's going to be, but only the governor is going to give us the okay or whatever on that. But I would love to get back into, because I get calls all the time demanding that we go back into council so people can comment. And I said, it's not my call. So, and a lot of, I think, especially people who don't have computers or laptops, it's hard for them to communicate. They either got to call us on the phone or come down in person, and we really can't do with them much in person because we got those barriers in front of us. So, and with that, I'll turn it over to the president, Margot Somerville.
Thank you so much. I don't know, Councilman Freeman, did you want to open up for any questions if anyone had questions on clerk's side?
Okay, yes, before you proceed, Margot, any questions? Looking here, any hands raised, Sarah? I see Councilman Malik and then
Councilman Neal.
Mr. Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Keith. You know, I definitely appreciate the efforts to get legislation to council members as quickly as possible. I know that, you know, hopefully we can continue to work on that and work on improving those processes. I think particularly one thing that might be helpful is even if we don't know the exact text of the legislation that's coming in, if there would be ways that we would be able to see the general topics or the title clauses of things that are likely coming in, even a week or two in advance, I think that would be tremendously helpful as well. So I think that would also help then on the other end, which I think is also working on how we communicate and interact with the residents. I think as we go back in person, that's going to be another challenge moving forward, using technology and all that and social media. So I think that's another big focus in my opinion.
Okay, I'd love to do that.
Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Neal, come to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regards to our legislation, when we started going paperless, we were looking at on-base. We had compared with Granicus and some others to where council would be able to follow legislation through the legislative process. It was layered where law would have access to a certain part of the legislation, council would have access to a part, and our citizens would have the ability to follow legislation as well. I've asked in the past, where does that stand? So I'll ask now, where does that stand? Because I think we've seen now, with, especially with this COVID period, we need that. We have already had residents, even when we were in our regular process, complain that they would come down and we would be voting on something and they wouldn't know about it till that day. So I think it's imperative that we do our due diligence to look at what we looked at. Wow, we started looking at this maybe 8 years ago. Gary was president at that time. The on-base, and we were looking at Granicus, because Granicus was used by Columbus, Cleveland, and Congress. But we went with on-base. So again, if we could look at the legislative tool where we would be able to follow the legislation through so that we can make our comments, we wouldn't interfere with the law department, and then citizens would be able to see what's taking place as well. There would be different access points to the legislation. And then in regards to us going live with our meetings, I know the school board has done this, where they've taken their meetings out to the community. Mr. Clerk, I think you have, I don't know if Mr. Freeman was around then, but I think you have some history of understanding when council used to do that at one time.
Right.
We've got this shared asset of our CLCs. If nothing else, we could plan every other meeting or at least one meeting a month until we get through COVID, where we go out into the community in our CLCs. The technology is there, the spacing is there, and if not that, we could coordinate something with the library. But just a suggestion for us to give our citizens access to their city government.
Is the space there for all the community center? If you get 50 people at a meeting or 30 people,
For most of the high schools, they're structured that
Okay.
way.
all right. Thanks.
Yeah, yeah. I know, Mr. Neal, we had those conversations for some time about being able to follow the legislation as it's going along. I don't know if that's available through OnBase. I'm not sure what we've looked at, but that is certainly something to be visited. Ms. Somerville, come to you now.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Just to highlight a few of the major accomplishments in 2020 from Akron City Council was just the fact that we did quickly adjust to procedures of having to operate virtually through meetings. Could not have done this without the help of Sarah, our deputy clerk, who really stepped up. We love Bob, but Bob is least honest to say that I am technology challenged or technically challenged in terms of computers and things of that nature. So Sarah has stepped up in a major way and has been running our meetings virtually and setting up our Zoom links. And so we appreciate her for stepping up in the way that she did when we most needed her. Another major accomplishment for 2020 for Akron City Council is that we really did make history. For the first time, we brought all of council together to collectively work on something when we created our special committee, Reimagining Public Safety. So we did have 22 meetings. We've partnered and collaborated with the University of Akron and put out a report that all of council should be really proud of. And so we're proud of those accomplishments. As we look forward to the rest of 2021, we want to work effectively in making sure that we allocate that $100,000 per ward through our City of Akron City Council CARES Relief Program. You know, oftentimes we think it's going to be easy to spend $100,000, but we're going to really work really effectively and diligently to make sure that every dollar goes out into the community. We have a very small window, making sure that those funds are spent by the end of this year. Another goal for Akron City Council is that we finish our reimbursements of our funds for our 2019 Akron City Council Neighborhood Partnership Grant. We had awarded grants through that program last year and COVID hit. So a lot of our nonprofits were not able to complete their projects. They weren't able to hold their community events and do the things that they had planned to do because of COVID. And so what we did is we extended those projects and giving them an opportunity to hopefully, once we've come to a place where we can be safe, they can still hold those community projects that as they planned in last year. Also, Bob alluded to it, really creating a plan for council to come back in a safe way, looking at our chambers to make sure that we have surfaces that can be easily wiped down, cleaned, and sanitized. So that is another goal, an objective that we are looking at and creating a plan to come back, but not just to come back, but to come back in a safe way. Another real plan for Akron City Council is to really create a public relations plan for council. We have to do a better job of really sharing council's story, letting our residents know of all the great things that are happening down in council chambers, finding better ways we can engage with them and keep them informed, whether that's social media or what those things might be, but really wanting to create a solid plan around public relations and getting our messaging out into the community. And another piece of that is also looking to hire an additional support staff. Again, as council continues to strive towards doing more council-led or driven initiatives, we're going to need support to handle that work. We already currently have Reimagining Public Safety. We've got our grant program. Now we have our COVID relief program. And so we're definitely going to need some help to make sure that we are running these initiatives in the ways that they would need to be. And sometimes we're going to need a little bit more extra help to do that. So we're really looking for maybe an additional support staff to help us run some of these programs. And that's really all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much, President Somerville. And would be looking for any other questions or comments, looking for any hands raised here. Okay, very good. Yeah, just thanks, as President Somerville said, thanks to Sarah, Holly, Bob, for getting us through this year. It's been unlike anything I've ever seen, any of us has seen. So if we have no further questions.
Mr. Chair, I actually have 3 hands that are raised. I see Councilman Neal, Councilman Malik, and Councilman Lombardo.
I am sorry, I'm missing those. Okay, Councilman Neal.
Actually, sir, I'll defer. My hand went up last. I think it was Malik, Lombardo, and myself, sir.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Malik?
Yes, I just want to take a second to point out, all of the things President Somerville mentioned that council really hasn't done before, especially reimagining public safety. And just take a second to point out that was something that President Somerville really led on and really set out this kind of ambitious goal. And we were able to make it happen because of our leadership. So just want to point out that, council is making a lot of strides, and that's due to the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Lombardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just wanted to ask the neighborhood partnership project grants, so we can let our different neighborhood groups know that they can apply for 2021.
Councilman Lombardo, we have not launched 2021 because we're still trying to handle programs for 2019 that could not happen because of COVID. So once we launch for this year, we'll let you know. Right now, we're trying to get wrapped up with 2019.
Mr. Neal.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'd like for us to, as council, to kind of take a deep look at ourselves like we did the police department. I mean, it's good that we did the public safety, reimagining public safety, but we have a housing and economic development committee. We have health, we have park and rec. Every one of our committees should have goals outlined by council as a whole, that committee is responsible for making sure that council achieves each year. I mean, it was good to hear about the homeless task force that the administration was coming up with. But if any of us has been paying attention, we know we've got a tsunami that's getting ready to hit with evictions. Council should be ahead of that. We should be looking at ways to address that now with our community partners. We've got a water bill that we have not addressed. Council should be looking at that. We've got one of the highest poverty rates. We should be looking at the overall taxation that comes through, not just from the city, but from the county and from the state, and see how that's going to impact our residents. To see how we should function, all we need to do is look at Congress. Congress sends and develops their own plan and sends bills.
Councilman Neal, let's try to stay. I appreciate everything you're saying. Let's try to stay on task, though.
I am, sir, because within council, we're talking about our goals and objectives. Our goals and objectives. And
actually,
I think it's
we're talking about the budget right now.
Yes, sir, we are. But this is all encompassing, because with that comes. Okay.
I'm going to have.
Let me finish.
I don't mean any disrespect, but why don't you go ahead and wrap up, and then we'll move on to.
Okay. I'll wrap up, sir, because these questions carry over from last year. Council has not. We need to come together to understand what council's budget is. We have not done that. I agree with our president. We need to understand if we want to mail something out, we don't even know what our budget is for postage. We need to have a real discussion about council's budget and about council's goals and objectives. I mean, I'm glad that we came together, as Council President said, for the first time with reimagining public safety, but that's sad for that to be the first time. That means
Okay,
we have
thank
to
you.
work together.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councilman Neal. Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Is there anything else? I have to scroll through here to see if I'm missing any hands. Sarah?
You can see that Councilman Malik has his hand
Okay.
raised.
Councilman Malik.
Sorry, just one final question. As we're talking about this Akron City Council Cares COVID money, is it accounted for within the existing budget, or is it in council? Is it a different line item?
So it's actually within, we're going to get to it tomorrow, actually. It's actually contained within kind of one lump sum CARES Act budget. So, and that the council piece is one line item of that.
Okay, so there's a separate COVID.
Right. Yeah. It doesn't show up here under the council budgets. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Parker.
All right. Let's move on to our municipal courts, and who is going to be addressing us today?
I guess I'm next up. Jim Laria from the
Hi,
Akron
Jim.
Clerk Office, Clerk. Mr. Chairman, Council, good to see everybody today, even though it's remotely. It's been an interesting year, to say the least, as far as what we had to do to keep the courts open. But we were able to succeed in that. COVID-19 drastically changed our operations, and we adjusted, working with the police department and the judges and the court administrator. We were able to work things out where we were able to keep the court functioning every day. And my office never shut down. We were open 24/7, 365. I'm very proud of that. Our staff, for the most part, stayed relatively healthy. And we got through a very, very rough year. But we're looking for brighter days ahead now with the vaccines and such, and looking to continue to move the court forward. But when you look at our overall numbers, I think you have my report. I did submit it as far as the actual numbers. If you look up and down the filings to the money, we were off, I'm guessing, right around 28% of where we were last year as far as dollars and case filings. But you can look at those numbers for yourself. I give you a full 5-year case filing analysis and revenues and, you know, the whole gamut. But on the whole, we actually did fairly well when you consider everything. For a number of months in the summer, the law enforcement really wasn't filing too many traffic tickets or parking tickets, and so our filings really dwindled, along with you know, the civil filings obviously were down too. But on the whole, we were steady and we kept things moving, and we did dispose of quite a few cases, even though our overall numbers were down. But I'm very proud of our staff and what we were able to maintain, and got through the year, like I say, for the most part, everybody being pretty healthy and living within the budget, and being able to continue to move our office forward. With the current operating computer system, we've made great strides there. We'll continue to make great strides this year to update that. We expanded e-filing, where we now have both Bath is fully on board, along with the state patrol, on e-filing tickets, and we're talking with our police department in the city of Akron to try to get them on board once they finish their stuff in the dispatch area. So things are looking up. We're moving forward, and with our goals for this year, again, it's pretty much the same. Again, to adjust to the COVID protocols and maintain office operations and service to the public. Again, continuing to work with the judges and the court administrator to keep our current operating system, to get it switched over to a new modern system, and pretty much live within the budget confines that we have to deal with every year. And still want to put a pitch in to you know, possibly update our physical area as far as coming together and creating a new potential courthouse. So with that being said, I'll throw it out for questions. I'll try to keep it short here.
I should have asked you this. Could we have all of the judges that are with us today please introduce themselves?
Yeah, I'm Judge Ron Cable. I'm the administrative judge of the court this year. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Judge Annalisa Stubbs Williams.
Judge Williams.
Hi, I'm Judge Nikki Walker.
Okay, very good. All right, I'd like to open it up to questions or comments from any city council members.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just realized I was on mute. I just realized I was muted as I was talking. I'm not good with my iPhone and Zooming. I had to run off to an appointment, so that's why I'm in my car. But John Oldham, and I'm zooming in from my iPhone.
Thank you, Judge Oldham.
And I think Judge Hamilton was muted.
Still muted, Judge.
I'm gonna try.
What about now? What about now?
There we go. There we go.
Judge David Hamilton, Akron Municipal Court. Sorry.
All right, very good. Thank you, Judge Hamilton. And I believe we've been introduced to everyone. Thank you very much. And I'd like to open up for any comments or questions from members of City Council, please. Mr. Malik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, all of the judges joining us today. And thank you, Mr. Laria and Ms. Jackson and everyone affiliated with the court. I know several magistrates as well. Mr. Laria, looking at AMSAs, I know that this was a significant focus of our discussion last year when we had the great joy to be in person. But can you kind of describe, I see that, there's significant expense, I think, which is for continued implementation this year in page 8.02. But can you just kind of talk about where the implementation is, how it's been going, and what the stage is over the next year?
Yeah, well, currently we've got a signed contract. We started actually working with the company to start the conversion process over from our data. We've got over 30 years of data that we need to convert. That's moving along very well. We've had meetings with our staff, with the technology company, going over all our different procedures and how things currently work and what we'd like to see in the new system. And like I say, we're literally meeting every other day almost with the technology company now, with working on the conversion and working on all the rules and establishing protocols. And so it's moving along really fairly rapidly right now. But we're still looking at probably another full year before we actually can go live. There's just so much that has to be done and covered and to make sure we incorporate everything. But we're currently moving. And the reason you see a lot of extra cost is this system is going to be a lot more expensive to operate than our past system. So there, you will see a cost increase there. But that's, part of moving into the full technology world. They just, those costs are going to go up. So that's the biggest difference. We did hire the judges and I, we split the cost of bringing in a person to kind of oversee the transition. And she's doing a tremendous job of, keeping everybody on task and making sure that we're moving forward. Yes, there is some extra expenses this year with that, but I think long-term, the efficiency of the system and being more accessible for the public, I think will bode well for the court.
Thank you, sir. I definitely, definitely agree that the added cost is well worth it. And I think this is priority. I know so many people have been involved in getting this off the ground. Mr. Fricker, I don't know if it might make sense to wait on this piece, but they did touch on the piece about the future of the Stubbs building and potentially new courthouse. I know some of that is, involved in this budget. Can you kind of talk about what this budget is setting aside for that and what the current status is?
Right, so that will be covered more so under the judge's budget. They have a special projects fund. And we'll talk about that. That budget is really a placeholder for when we ultimately have either debt service expenses or potentially like design expenses for the beginning of the design of the courthouse. That is the fund that will be utilized for that. So we'll talk about that. There's sufficient money in there for, even if the project started this year, to cover any design costs. It's unlikely that we would have probably debt issued until later in the year, and likely we would not have any debt service until next year. So there should be, more than sufficient money budgeted this year in the special projects fund to accommodate that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Neal?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I may have missed this. This may have been stated, but as far as the public having access, were there mentioned as far as any CARES dollars that were used?
I'm not sure about that. I don't believe so. We have an interactive website currently. They can look their cases up. They can check their status. They can pay their fines and costs online if they so desire. So that's pretty much what we have available right now. We also moved a cashier window down on the main floor. So that was to help try to keep people out of the building and off the floors. And we've been operating that since COVID started. And that's really, I think, helped dissipate as far as having our office potentially expose the virus and stuff. And it's worked out really fairly well down there. It's a little tight, but it's a busy place.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Laria?
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, thank you. Jim, thank you very, very much.
Oh, I do see someone has just raised their hand. Someone who is listed as iPhone, and your camera is not on, so I'm not sure. I see you now, Councilwoman Samples.
Thank you. Jim, I have a question for you. You just touched on your website where people can make their payments at it. And due to COVID, a lot of people are not interacting with the courts. I know they can call and maybe reschedule their appointments and things of that sort. But what I've noticed on the website is that they can make a payment on there, but they have to make the full payment. Is there any thoughts to, especially while we're still in COVID, where there can be like they maybe can pay like some of their payment instead of the whole amount? Because won't that trigger it either going to collections or maybe even a warrant if they don't pay it in a timely fashion?
Well, online you can't. You have to pay all or nothing. You can still mail your payment in. You can still stop in. We're open 24/7 to make your monthly payment. So yeah, we're still doing monthly payments, but the way our website is laid out as far as currently, we don't currently have a capability to take monthly payments via the website. Now, under the new system, we are looking at that, trying to get that incorporated into the website. But right now, in order to if you're going to make a payment, you have to basically pay it's all or nothing. If you want to make your monthly payment, you either have to mail it in or you have to stop in to the courthouse to pay your monthly payment. But those are still options. And for the most part, the court's been very generous about exceeding times and giving people second and third chances to expand their payment plans and give them extra starts to get them off suspension and stuff. So the court has been very generous and to the citizens of trying to get them legal at minimal expense to the defendants. So it's really been, for as crazy a year it has been, it's really been a busy year for my office especially.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands. So again, Mr. Laria, thank you very, very much. Oh, there, Councilman Malik.
Yeah, I just want to say, I mean, I understand that there are limits to technology, but I mean, per Councilwoman Sample's point, if, you know, we should at least look at finding some way of adding that functionality in the current website. It seems, you know, we are going to be in the middle of this pandemic for several more months. The next system is not going to be available for some time. I mean, I think that that may be something that, you know, just kind of saying, hey, it's either the you know, in person or mailing may not be enough in terms of, you know, helping folks out at this time. That's just my opinion.
Well, we're trying to control expenses on an old system. We don't want to get caught up in having to, that would actually be that'd be some major programming changes when you're dealing with receivables and changing and trying to keep things accurate, because our current system automatically goes in and pays our system. And so to try to come in and change it where it has to recalculate every time it comes in, that you're talking about some major programming changes, and to put it into the old system, I don't think that's good fiscal planning. We are going to put it in under our new system where we will have monthly payments available, but we're looking at it goes to get against, you know, is the cost worthwhile by the time you get the programming and stuff done for, you know, maybe 6 months, let's say, of being able to take payments. I just don't think that's a cost-effective cost right now when we're literally in the last year of our current operation with our system.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Mr. Laria. Not missing anyone, I don't
very
believe.
much. I appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's move on now. And who are we going to be hearing from here? First off, please introduce yourself. I know I kind of had the judges introduce themselves a bit prematurely, but who'll be taking the lead here, please?
Good evening, Council President and Chairman Freeman and members of the Budget and Finance Committee. I'm Montrella Jackson, the Court Administrator for Akron Municipal Court, and you've already met all the judges. I will be presenting with the Honorable Administrative Judge Ron Cable, who is also on the call today. On behalf of the court, we are delighted to review with you our 2021 budget proposal for the Judicial Division of the Municipal Court. Our budget request reflects the personnel costs, planned expenditures, projected, and services which the judges have determined that are necessary to operate a fully functional court and meet the mandates associated with the programs and services provided by the court. You will also see, as you may have had copies in your packets of our statistics for the court for 2021, as well as our goals and objectives. And much of the work last year, as you may have guessed, was around pivoting, increasing our technology, making things more accessible to the public, as well as upgrading our technology, getting equipment for court staff, as well as upgrading our 30-year-old case management system, which you all are very familiar with during the presentations for the budget surrounding that proposal. But also, you know, I'm proud to highlight the amount of subsidy grant money that we were able to secure last year, which was almost $600,000. Half of that was payroll subsidy funding from the state. The other half was grants from local funders. And I'm glad to hear that City Council is looking at expanding their public relation programs, because we would not have been able to make that possible without the work of our community outreach coordinator, Nicole Hagee, who is on the call today. So definitely it has tripled our grant revenues, our subsidy funding that we brought in to the court. And then also, of course, our building, and Jim Laria spoke a little bit about that, what our plans are. But certainly, you know, when I looked at the statistics for the court, I'm still impressed by what we were able to accomplish with having to go through a mandatory stay-at-home order, where the court was only operating for essential services and then pivoting back to court services in June 1st, bringing people back on site. But someone asked about CARES Act money. We did purchase PPE, and we also got grants from the Supreme Court for video conferencing equipment. So that's a glimpse into what you probably would have guessed we had to do, similar to what council had to do to shore up services so we could still service the public. So at this point, I will just, you've already met Administrative Judge Cable, but if he might have a few words, I would defer to him at this point.
Absolutely. Judge Cable?
Yeah, I just want to say, I think that we've been excellent stewards of our money, and, to think about, especially in a year of a pandemic, almost bringing in $600,000 in grant funding, which is going to be used for the technology that we've all spoke about here today. And in addition to that, there's several other things with our 6 specialized docket. We're able to expand services for the people who come before us. So, not to pat ourselves on the back too much, but, I'm pretty proud of us. And I think that certainly Nicole deserves recognition as well, because she's done a lot of the applications for the grants. So we've been very successful at that this year. And I think that we're really trying to do more with less.
Great. Yeah, there's an exception for patting on the back during 2020. So, feel free. Thank you, Nicole, for that's impressive. Thank you very, very much. Thank you, Judge Cable. Anything else you'd like to offer? Feel free. All right, I'm going to go ahead and look around to see if we have any additional comments or questions from council members. Okay, anyone?
Mr. Chair, I just have a question.
Yes, this is Mr. Mobian.
I'm not sure if this goes to the amendment. Ms. Jackson. The question has to do with your budget. It sounds like when I talked to Mr. Fricker, he indicated that you tend to underspend your budget. And as a result of that, there were some parts that were being addressed in terms of reducing your budget. Mr. Fricker, can you clarify the point I'm making?
Yeah, let me just kind of clarify that. So, we've had some discussions with Ms. Jackson and Judge Cable, and we've agreed that we're just going to kind of monitor the budget, and if it's deemed necessary to make adjustments to that throughout the course of the year, we will be coming back to council to adjust those labor budgets. So I think we had a pretty good conversation about what that budget amount was and what we can do throughout the course of the year to look at that. So I think, like I said, if there's any adjustments that need to be made, we will come back to council as we often do. Typically we do 2 or 3 amendments throughout the course of the year. So we would take that opportunity to make any adjustments to that budget that we deem necessary.
Right now, part of that budget would not be impacted.
That is correct. We will have sufficient budget to operate the court with the staff that is in place.
And I would also like to add, with the case management system and the building project, those are 2 separate funds from the general fund that were created by the judges for computerization of the court and for, the efficient operations of the court and the building needs, which is actually different from what Mr. Fricker is addressing.
But your operational budget is it maintaining, or are you underspending your operational budget? Not money you set aside for the court, the building of your court and that kind of thing. I know you have separate funds for your capital budget. That's separate. And I know there are other funds that you have been holding on to that you're using with Mr. Laria to improve your technology,
yes,
your management system. And in terms of other areas of your operations, are you maintaining your level of spending or underspending or what?
So our request is to fund our budget at the 55 full-time equivalent positions that we have based on the salaries for those 55 positions. And so
And that
we would be,
is that,
would be our budget request.
and that is what we are doing that, Mr. Fricker?
That is what we will fund, the 55, employees that are in place. If the budget that is there is insufficient to fund that, then we would seek to come back to council and amend to accommodate that staffing level.
And that is satisfactory, Judge and Ms.
I
Jackson?
believe it's satisfactory. We had some lengthy discussions, and there is a bit of a shortfall, but there's different ways to make that up, and the city has given me their word that we'll come back midterm and adjust the budget if needed. I don't think we're talking about. It's significant, but it's not huge. We may be talking about an increase midterm, a request for 80 to 100,000, maybe a little more, somewhere around in that area. So we're going to see what happens throughout the next 6 months, and come back and adjust if needed. And Steve has has committed to cooperating with that if we do need money for salaries and there's a shortcoming.
But currently it's maintaining your staffing levels.
Correct.
Yeah, I have no plans to lay anybody off. So that's not in the works.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Mr. Fricker, I'll only go back a year or two. Historically, what kind of adjustments have we made throughout the year to the budget?
So every year, and I can't speak specifically to the judge's budget, but typically we will come back to council usually early fall. And often those adjustments are not so much increasing, but moving budget between categories, that type of thing. So I think last year we did 2 separate amendments. That's pretty typical. We may do 3 in certain years. But that's a common occurrence that we do appropriation amendments throughout the course of the year.
I think you're right. I think it was just 2 last year. Right. Okay. Let's see, Mr. Neal.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Judge, when I heard, I couldn't help but hear the word satisfactory, and it kind of caught me off guard, because satisfactory, I'm thinking of a grade level as a C. And I'm wondering with, not saying that's just the way it hit me, not saying, because I'm wondering, in your budget, has the level of service to those that need your court system been hindered by COVID? And do you anticipate, as we open up more, a greater demand to where these resources you're talking about need to be kind of like allocated now, so that you're able to operate at a higher level?
Well, I would, of course, as with any entity, there's always a wish list, and then there are things that, you could still do a good job and maintain, and we could still maintain, the court and the current services that we provide. I think that, as COVID is lifted, I think that there will be somewhat of a boom. I think that, and I guess, I don't have any hard facts, but I will tell you, arrests and citations were down. People weren't out moving around as much, and there's probably a lot of reasons for that. So yes, I think our case numbers are going to go up. I think our civil filings are definitely going to go up. And we may need more resources in the future. As it stands right now, what's been provided in the budget, we are going to be able to maintain the same services that we've maintained throughout the last couple of years. So, I think that I wish I could answer your question a little more directly, but I think that, we're going to be fine with what's being provided. And, like I say, if need be, midterm, we're going to ask for additional funding.
And the reason why I asked that, I know because of COVID, for crimes that would usually be, I guess the term is prosecuted, tickets or citations have been written, and so it's going to, as you said, it could possibly expect a boom. Want to ask another thing, just in light of the climate that we're in, and is there anything? And I remember reading in the paper there was some concern. Have we budgeted any more for extra security for our court systems?
Well, we do have a security task force, and you know, I'm the head of that. It's something that's relatively new. So yeah, as it stands now with COVID, I think we're fine. But as the court reopens, I think that there have always been some security concerns. And, you know, that might be a conversation for another day, but there are a lot of reasons for that. I mean, you know, it's no one's fault really. Just as time has evolved, you know, the Supreme Court has come out with different standards and best practices because all this has been studied. And, you know, right now our current building, the security, even though we're going to try to beef it up a bit, you know, it just lacks in a lot of areas where, you know, newer, more modern courthouses or courthouses where money has been spent on security, you know, they're just safer environments, you know. So, I mean, just to give you an example, you know, if you go into a newer courthouse over at the, you know, Common Police Court, even the you know, the new building, you know, there's carts, you know, even to get back in the judge's office areas, you know, in the employee areas. So luckily, since I've been here, we haven't had any major incidents, but as you all know, it only takes one. So we are going to work on that this year. We've been meeting regularly, and we have, you know, a lot of good stakeholders on our advisory board for that. So I'm hopeful that we'll make the court the safest place it can be under the circumstances, and that, you know, eventually we'll have a new facility that is extremely secure.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Judge. I just want to ask if you guys, as you look at that, if there's something that, of course, we could do from the budget side as council. I mean, please, this is the time that we need to know so we can do our part to support you. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And, you know, safety is definitely my #1 priority as well. So thank you, Councilman Neal.
Thank you. Mr. Malik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you for the presentations, Judge Cable and Ms. Jackson. My internet went out for a second, so my apologies if something was covered by the questions that I'm asking. But looking at the goals and objectives document, you know, one of the things is continue pretrial services pilot, participate in countywide racial fairness justice study, and evaluate core policies for bail reform. Can you talk particularly about the pretrial services pilot and the bail reform conversation? And then also, kind of relatedly, you know, we've heard a lot about the fact that, you know, there are potentially a huge wave of evictions coming in the fall. You know, how are you all planning to, you know, you know, get ready and address that and make sure that the services are in place to address that, so that, you know, we're processing these in a timely way, but also, you know, making sure that folks have, you know, the adequate supports to make sure, you know, folks aren't we don't have unnecessary evictions or things like that. So I guess it's kind of a general question on those points.
I can share what I have available today. So on the pretrial services, much of that was halted with the pandemic. We were part of a pilot that was actually countywide. I believe we were the only municipal court, and we were looking at a new assessment, safety assessment tool, which the judges could probably speak in more detail on that than me. But it would help assess in terms of, you know, someone's propensity, like whether it was okay, what type of sentencing that they would get. So there's some work that's still being done on that. There was a component for a racial fairness study, which we'd like it to be a county-wide project. We've been recruiting other courts. It's done by Harvard, a professor from Harvard University. And it looks at racial fairness and bail decisions. But of course, we know in Cleveland, they've rolled out a whole pretrial services unit there. And so that, that's in terms of the recommendation across the country at this point is to review that process. And then just on the evictions, looking at those numbers, if we're saying that we're down by maybe half of the normal amount of evictions that we would do, and that's, assuming that people would still be evicted, maybe that they don't have the funding that's not available, we don't know. So now our staff have done an incredible job, the magistrates on those cases and the judges in terms of, handling those things. They've been on site, but the participants have been able to participate by Zoom and remotely. So they've really covered quite a bit of the backlog that we had on those cases. So I don't know if anyone else from the court that's on the Zoom would have something to add.
Well, I would like to thank our magistrates for how hard they've worked to show the eviction cases the care that they deserve. And if any of you would like to make a comment, I think that now would be a good time.
Well, and while they're chiming in, I know Angela had shared that Stark County's court administrator had called us. They were hearing some great things. So I'll let Angela share that.
Thank you. I'm Magistrate Angela Hardway. I'm currently one of the senior magistrates at the court, and I got the fortunate privilege of turning us into a remote hearing court over the process of getting through the pandemic. What we have seen, I'm not sure if City Council is aware, but we are still hearing up to 25 eviction hearings a week. They are not slowed down for us to some extent. What you're seeing in decreases in evictions granted is the fact that you've got the Summit Cares programs, you've got the state of Ohio programs, you've got money out there right now available, and we do what we can to make all tenants and landlords equally knowledgeable of those monies so that landlords aren't suffering any more than the tenants at this point. The goal is to keep everybody stable while we're getting through this pandemic. We have seen as we've went through this process, I don't believe we have very much backlog at all in our eviction proceedings. I'm pretty sure we are up to date, but we're seeing with the remote access and the remote hearings, we're seeing an increase in participation by defendants in the process versus coming to the courthouse. We were very concerned when the pandemic started with access to justice, and that all litigants would be available. So we have a separate room set up for those individuals who have no access to internet, that they can come in, and as long as they pass the safety requirements, which is the temperature check, the facial mask wearing, and no symptoms, they are able to come in and still fully participate in their hearings at this point.
I just wanted, I'm Magistrate Towell. I work with Magistrate Hardway, and I do a lot of the eviction hearings. I just wanted to clarify one point. Magistrate Hardway said we have 25 per week. I think she meant we have 15 to 25 evictions 4 times a week is around the amount of hearings. So we hear them Monday mornings, Tuesday mornings, Thursday mornings, and Friday mornings. And as she stated, so up to 25 4 times a week. So thank you.
Additionally, although we're in the very beginning portions of this, we are trying to pilot through the Supreme Court of Ohio an ODR program where we are hoping, I am the mediation supervisor, so I am with Montrella's assistance, trying to get an online dispute resolution process in place for both small claims and evictions that will allow landlords and tenants through the pilot program that the Supreme Court picked us for late 2020, early 2021. So we're going to see some movements in the way that our mediation program, Judge Walker spearheaded moving mediations to solely online last year so that we can still facilitate the movement of small claims as well. And that has been going quite smoothly. I have volunteers that throughout the week do mediations on their own time so that we can continue to move forward with the mediation process. So we're going to be adding another component with the online dispute resolution. At least we're hoping. We've got to work a few things out with the new docketing system because everything has to work together with the forms. So we've got a couple steps to get through that, but I believe that we should be offering mediation services in the form of online dispute resolution to eviction proceedings as well shortly. I would say within 6 months.
Thank you. Kind of coming back to the budget, coming back to numbers here. Judge Cable, are there sufficient funds to accomplish some of the things that we've heard about currently in the budget?
Yeah, absolutely. At this time, there are sufficient funds to accomplish everything we need to accomplish. The only shortfall is, payroll. And I think that, like we've talked about before, Mr. Fricker and I sat down and talked, and we'll make a mid-year adjustment if we have to. There could be a situation where somebody retires or leaves and there's a little bit of a surplus. So if that doesn't happen, we will need to come back and ask for some additional funding for our payroll in the tune of anywhere from 80 to 120,000. That'll be the request.
Sure. And, pardon me, we try in the budget hearings, we try to keep things on task with dollars, but then, the programs that we're hearing about, they're intriguing. And so I just have to rein it back in, but thank you. Wanted to make sure the numbers are there.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Let's see, Miss Samples.
Thank you. Judge Cable, I have a few questions. I know you said you guys might have to come back if there's a shortfall as it relates to payroll. If you need more money, that won't require you to lay anyone off if there's a shortfall before you come back to us, will it? That's my first question.
No, I am not going to lay anybody off this year. Just as with anything, there are different ways to accomplish goals, and I feel pretty confident that the city will work with us to maintain our current staff. If that weren't to happen, we would have to pull money from somewhere else, and I don't think that's I don't think that that's going to happen. So I think that what we'll do is if we do have a shortfall and no one leaves or retires, then at that point we'll come back and ask for additional funding.
Okay, and then my second question is, with you all gradually going back into the courthouse, which I know some of you are already there, but with COVID, do you have a budget in mind for when you all do go back into the building? Will there be thermometers at the security check-in, PPE for people coming into the building? Is there money set aside in the budget for that?
Well, that's a great question. Yeah, we have, we do have thermometers in the building. We have 2 on the first floor. We're going to have 1 through our secure access. And, I know Montrella could answer this question too, but we've had, we have a lot of supplies. We have a cleaning staff. We had to hire an outside company to really come and clean all day during the day. And they do a fabulous job. I mean, they're here all day long, take stuff down, door handles, knobs, floors, elevators. I think that I feel comfortable in this building, as comfortable as you can during the pandemic. And Montrell, I don't know if you want to add to that.
No, Judge, you covered it. That same thing I would say.
Okay. Thanks, Judge Cable.
Thank you, Councilwoman Samples. I appreciate it.
Mr. Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question is more so for Mr. Fricker. And we've all asked about staffing and if there's enough there. I know council used to get from departments, if they thought they would need staffing, that was shown in their budget, even if they hadn't hired someone, so that we could track where these dollars are from. Because I heard the judge say, 100 or 200. But if we have these shortfalls in different departments and whatnot, from council standpoint, it'd be easier to track where those dollars are allocated right now. And if they're not used, in the past, we were told they go back into the general fund. Right now, with that not being budgeted that way, as council, is this all just coming from the general fund, these dollars, if they need them? Because if we're setting the budget now, shouldn't we have, know where those dollars are coming? So I'm just asking for clarification. We used to do it if someone thought they would need staffing, it was reflected in their budget, even if they didn't have that person. And then at the end of the year, we were saying those dollars were put back into the general fund. And it was easier for us to track as council, and we didn't have to worry where we were going to find the money because it was already budgeted. And the reason why I'm asking the question is if we know going in that there's potential need, why did we switch that way of budgeting, sir? You're still muted.
Yes, so we are budgeting the 55 staff that they have employed at the current time. As I said, I've had conversations with Judge Cable and Ms. Jackson. Typically there is some vacant positions that occur from time to time if people leave, and typically you do free some dollars up, so we just kind of want to watch what happens throughout the course of the year. And if, like I said, if we need additional dollars, we will seek to come back to council and amend to put those dollars back in.
Okay, very good. Judge Cable, thank you so much. I mean, access to justice during a pandemic, by virtue of the fact that it continues to be there, speaks of us as as a government, as a society, as a people. So thank you for your innovation and the things that you and all the other judges and magistrates and clerks and everyone that's involved has done during a difficult time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, I do not see any hands, and I'd like to again thank you to each and every one of you for what you've done this year. Let's just hope and pray for 2021 being a year that looks like I've quit using the word normal. I don't know. It's a setting on a dryer now, so thank you. All right, thanks so much. We are going to move along here. Next, we're going to be going to, I believe, talking with some folks from Human Resources.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of City Council. You'll be just talking to me today. I'm Don Rice. I'm the Director of Human Resources. I usually have my managers with me in these meetings, but they are in the middle of doing catch-up transactions for our Workday project. We're about a week away, or not even a week away. We're like 4 or 5 days away from kicking it off. So it's a very busy time for us. I will say You know, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but 2020 was a very unusual year for the Department of Human Resources. We basically were on the forefront with all the COVID-19 policies, processes, and procedures, which we had to revise sometimes on a daily basis based on guidance from the state, the federal, and local entities. It was a very heavy lift for us, but I am very proud of my staff and the work that they did. Through the pandemic, we worked very closely with the Law Department and Labor Relations to make sure that the process for our employees through the pandemic was as seamless as possible. And I think we accomplished that. In the latter part of the year, a great deal of our time went to coordinating and developing the HCM component of the Workday project. We are still working very, very hard on that. And as I said previously, you'll hear a lot more about this probably when Steve and Shelley talk tomorrow. But the HCM, the human resources component of Workday, again, it was a heavy lift for us for the second half of the year. And again, my folks have done yeoman's work to make sure that they, meet the deadlines they need to meet and do the things that they need to do. I asked my managers to kind of tell me what they accomplished this year that didn't have anything to do with COVID-19 or Workday. And I was very surprised to hear and to see these things written down. I'm aware of them on a daily basis, but we rolled out supervisory training for our through our NeoGov learning management system, along with other developmental courses. We continued our program of free tuition for city employees and qualified dependents at Stark State. I can't say anything more glowing about this program. I think as it's rolled down the hill from when we started it, it's become more and more popular. A lot of people are taking advantage of it. They continue to take advantage of it. It's a great vehicle for our employees and their qualified dependents to take courses at Stark State for tuition free. They still have to pay for books and other fees, but it's a great program. The Mayor's Youth Leadership Council did some very, very, very good things during the pandemic with regard to financial literacy training via Zoom, where kids from the Akron Public Schools and surrounding schools they themselves did financial literacy training for other students in the schools. It's a great program. It's still working. We worked with City Council on the Reimagining Public Safety. And here's I think one of our bigger heavy lifts. Based on the changes to the charter that occurred last year, we developed and revised our HR procedures and policies, and we created new policies for the Human Resources Commission based on the charter change. So when I sit down and I reflect on 2020, I can't help but to be proud of the 18 people who work in the Department of Human Resources. It's a great ship. I have the pleasure of leading it. And I think we've done some good work this year. And with that, I'll open it up to the group.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Questions or comments? Looking for raised hands. I do not
Mr.
see.
Chair, I'm
There
not
you
sure
go.
if you can see.
I do see Councilman Malik now. Councilman Malik?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Director Rice. I definitely appreciate, that human resources really was at the forefront of a lot over the past year, as you mentioned. So thank you for that, and obviously your staff. Looking at page 10-02, I just wanted a little bit of clarification, maybe either from you or from Mr. Cricker. There's a significant expense on debt service that was zeroed out, and then there's $700,000 increase on insurance and $400,000 increase on current expenditures. So, and it all kind of works out to about even a small decrease. But
right.
I just wanted to kind of understand what was going on there.
So I think I'll hand that to Steve.
Yeah. So in terms of the current expenditures, well, I'm sorry, let's talk about the insurance part. So that is basically what that is the city is self-insured for our medical insurance, and that is the payment of the claims. And typically you have annual inflation of 4 to 5% in those claims every year. So that amount reflects that. It also reflects a little bit about, potentially we did have a pretty good year last year in terms of claims. Now, I think part of that was due to COVID and, some of the typical, kind of elective type procedures that some people do, they may not have been able to take advantage of. So, it's potentially that some of that would hit, in 2021. So we did budget for some inflation in our medical claims. Having said that, in terms of the debt service, so as we have talked about over the past several years, we issued some notes back in 2009 to fund a shortfall we had in our self-insurance fund balance. And we've been paying that note down ever since that time. And we were in a position last year, because our claims were a little bit lower than they typically are, that I was able to basically pay off that note last year. So we budgeted for about $1 million in debt service last year. We had enough in the fund that I was able to pay off that remaining extra $500,000. So that note has now been retired. And therefore that debt service cost will no longer appear in the budget.
We did have a sharp decrease. I think the numbers will show that when we look at it on elective surgeries last year, because quite frankly, the hospitals weren't doing them until the last quarter of the year.
Yeah, I'd read recently that this was a national study. I mean, we're talking into, I think it was billions of dollars worth of surgeries that had not taken place because they were.
I think the only person who had elective surgery last year was me. I did towards the end of the year.
All right. Looking for any other comments or questions? Yeah, quite a year for you guys. I talked to our HR person the other day, and just how are you doing? And she said, "Look, don't ask me to be sane right now. HR in 2020 has been crazy. So thanks for everything that's happened there."
If I had hair, Councilman, it would be great.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could, as someone that's also been heavily involved with the Workday project, I'd like to express my appreciation to Director Rice and his staff for, the work that they've put in on the Workday project. I know I could say that for a number of us, that is, the majority of our jobs over the past, 6 to 9 months is working on that system, and his staff has done an amazing job of not only, he gave a list of accomplishments that were just, what they're supposed to be doing on their day-to-day activities, in addition to being able to stand up this system in a period of less than a year. So it was really a huge effort on their part. And, I'm eternally grateful for the effort that they put in last year.
Well, Director, I would say thank you. And I would say the same thing about yourself and your finance staff. You guys put in a yeoman's effort too. This is a great group effort. We are doing something as it relates to implementing Workday that hasn't been done before. We are implementing this in 2019 with COVID and all the crazy things that happened on an expedited schedule. And quite frankly, we're going to do it. So
I don't know how you best can relay information to your staff, but if you could just extend President Somerville, leadership, all the councilmen, if you could extend our gratitude to your staff, your next staff meeting, if they could please know that, we would appreciate that.
Thank you. I think my only real goal for 2021 is to not do another meeting on Zoom. I have to say this. I counted my Zoom meetings from March through last week, and I was over 600.
Yeah. I know my eye prescription for my glasses has changed too. So, all right.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate
Thank you so much. Any questions or comments for Mr. Rice before we would move on? Okay, thanks again, Don.
Thank you very much.
Next, we're going to be going into neighborhood services. Welcome. Who's with us today?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Budget Committee, and members of Council. My name is Yushin Sulash. I am the Deputy Service Director and of Neighborhood Assistance. I'm here to bring you information on behalf of the Department of Neighborhood Assistance. And it is my pleasure to be here this afternoon I can't begin this presentation without just giving an acknowledgement to my friend and former colleague, John Valley, the former director, who provided much tutelage to me over the past year and led this department through the threat of COVID. And as you all know, he just retired just at the end of last month. And so now I am overseeing this department. So I'd like to go ahead and get into the information for the department. I'd like to go ahead and begin with the nuisance compliance division. And some of our accomplishments, as you all know, a common theme throughout this entire afternoon has been the threat that we've all dealt with this past year with COVID. And I can't continue without just thanking this wonderful staff for being committed throughout the last year and being very committed. So the nuisance staff, just to give you some information, some of the accomplishments that we achieved, the successful incorporation of the police reserves into the duties and functions of the nuisance division. We also, the integration and reorganization of our animal control division to include a permanent part-time animal control warden. And some of the goals that we actually have for 2021 is to reduce the overall cost, develop a program with the Summit County Land Bank, and to reduce the number of tax delinquent vacant properties throughout the city. Also, we want to develop a program specifically for the nuisance division aimed at reducing a number of illegal dump sites. And I just want to go over a few numbers that we actually have for the nuisance division. For 2020 alone, high grass and weeds, we received 4,691 service requests. We actually issued 1,379 orders to comply. When it actually applies to junk vehicles for 2020, there were 1,174 service requests. In orders to comply, we issued 456. We actually towed 50. Okay, so that is actually in during COVID. And for exterior trash complaints, we actually had 2,839 service requests. We had issued 1,197 orders, and we had to report 568 to outside contractors. As it relates to junk tires, we disposed of 3,637 junk tires, and we spent a total of $13,119 related to that. So that's related to our nuisance division. If you actually go over to our 311 call center, the whole entire model over at our call center is customer service because we're constantly dealing with our residents throughout the city. And so that is our top priority at all times. But for 2020, we maintain customer services. We continue to promote 311 online. In August, we started answering calls for both water and sewer dispatch calls. And just to give you a few numbers for our department, we actually took in 67,000 service requests into our call center, 3,096 added to a call request throughout the year, for a total of 70,000, just over 70,000. For a total service request was 70,267 that came in internally to our call center. 8,428 came in through Akron 311 online for a total of 78,695 service requests. As I mentioned earlier, we started taking calls for sewer. We actually received 1,136 calls for sewer. 929 of those calls were answered and handled. We actually received 3,045 for water, and 2,703 of those calls were answered and handled. So for the year of 2020, we took in both combined with the 311 call center, combined with sewer and water, we took in 130,638 calls presented, and 122,694 of those calls were handled. So again, I just want to emphasize that customer service for our residents throughout the city is our top priority. Now, going on to our housing and community services division, as you know, again, the common theme is the threat that we actually dealt with through with COVID. But our 2020 accomplishments, due to the effects of COVID, the division was compelled to research, develop, and administer home inspection protocols in order to provide services to clients involved in various rehabilitation programs. We also received and processed 197 applications for the Lead Safe Akron grant, made 92 inspections, completed 31 units, and have 112 units right now in progress. Also, we assisted approximately 50 very low income, primarily elderly and disabled occupants throughout the city with grants for emergency or minor home repair through contract with Rebuilding Together of Summit County. We also provided contract management, payment monitoring, and quality control. And again, this program was directly affected by COVID-19. We also provided lead abatement training to 22 individuals, contractors, and staff. We attended 11 outreach programs to promote the lead program. Most were Zoom as it relates to COVID-19. As it relates to 2021 and what we're looking to do as far as our goals and objectives, we want to continue to provide COVID-safe home inspections per the guidelines and protocols in 2020 in order to provide safe services for our clients involved in various rehabilitation programs. Also, we want to continue the second year of a 3.5 year, 3.5 year, $4.6 million Lead Safe Akron grant, which will provide technical assistance to partnering agencies as well. And receive and process 115 applications. We will make 90 risk assessments and complete more than 70 units. So that is our Housing and Community Services Division. Moving forward to our Housing and Compliance Division, we had a lot of accomplishments within this division, and I'll share just a few with you. We were able to, our rental registration numbers increased significantly, and while this can be certainly attributed to the proof of registration requirements implemented by the eviction court, we still had to process everything, even though most of our staff was out due to COVID. Despite the inspection activities being halted over 3 months, interior inspections curtailed for 4 months, and most enforcement tools used fines and prosecutions halted for most of the year. We were still able to bring over 500 properties into compliance. We continue to trend downward with our referrals to the Housing Appeals Board for demolition, and this is showing signs of leveling off to a comfortable number, and we continue to evaluate each HAB referral to see if we have exhausted all other enforcement tools short of demolition. And lastly, our staff is to be commended again for helping to create and fully implement COVID-19 safety protocols designed to protect themselves and the public during our housing inspections. So those are the goals and accomplishments from the the Department of Neighborhood Assistance. I want to thank all of our administrators who successfully led their teams in this accomplishment. And at this time, if you have any questions, we'll be willing to answer.
Mr. Lash, does it make you tired reading off all those accomplishments? Because there's been a lot done.
There's been a lot done. You're absolutely right.
So we'll welcome aboard. This is a little different for all of us. Not seeing John Valley, but we're looking forward to good things. And I will go to Mr. Fusco at this time.
Thank you, Chairman Freeman. Question is, I see that you had reported out that you guys are taking the water and sewer calls at 311, which is outstanding. Great consolidation there. But in terms of the budget overall, I don't see an increase in terms of budgeting. Whenever that was set up, the call center, what we did was try to, pull from all the various departments that we were due to get, to take care of their calls, and they all contributed whenever it was kind of set up. I was just curious if, I don't know what it would look like in terms of the overall, but there's quite a few calls that they're taking on. And I was wondering, from a budget standpoint only, it just doesn't seem as though that there's a significant increase, but is that handled within here somewhere?
I will only say, Councilman Fusco, that we are appreciative of what we've been able to, we've been flexible. Our team has been able to take on these calls. We've been able to efficiently respond to some of the concerns that our residents have expressed. And, so far we're just doing it. We're not looking to the left or the right. We're just looking forward. And, that's what we've been focused on.
I appreciate it, but like I said, in terms of interfund charges and such, maybe, Mr. Fricker, there might be something to consider. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I probably would follow up on Councilman Fusco's. Any thoughts towards that, Steve, as far as, some of the changes that have been there, if it's going to affect or could affect their budget somewhat?
I mean, that's something that we will always keep an eye on in terms of if we need additional staff to handle the call volume. They've been able to pretty much pick up that call volume with the existing staff that they have.
Okay. And I'm sure, Mr. Lash, if that became approaching impossible, that you would let us know.
Absolutely.
I would just request, obviously, I'm sure that you look at the wait times often, so thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Lombardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I just wanted to thank the Department of Neighborhood Assistance and Services for all their help. I know that I relied on them a lot during my first year as council, so I really appreciate that. And, all the good things that they do really for every council person. But I just wanted to ask either Mr. Lash or Mr. Fricker about, I see the budget changes from 20 to 21. There's a lot of decreases there, but in regards to, I'll just pick one city service, like as far as, high grass and weeds, is from 20 to 2021. Has that fund increased any?
So the high grass and weeds, let me find that. So that's primarily contained within, so that's going to be the assist. So that's contained on page 11-3. So we did a slight increase over what we actually spent last year. That's one of those things that we would monitor. And if there's a need for additional dollars there, we could look to appropriate more. But we did appropriate about $50,000 more than what was actually spent last year.
Okay, I'm just seeing, so that was just one light item.
That's in
Others
the contractual
contributed to the
types of,
decrease.
right.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Sure. And I don't know, obviously our 2019 actuals based upon our 2021 budget, $300 some thousand there, almost $300 some thousand. Anything in particular about 2019 that would that I'm not aware of, to where we would just budget 433 this year?
Yeah, sometimes there's, depending on, the weather that you get in a particular year, there can be variations in the amount of mowing contracts that we have. So again, that's something that we will monitor, and if there's a need for additional dollars, we will look at that.
Okay, very good. Okay, still looking for any comments or questions. Mr. Fusco.
Thank you, Chairman. And I'm not sure where it's at within this budget here, but I believe whenever we had set up, if I recall correctly, the vacant building registration program, that fine money and everything, as well as registration funds, were going to be set aside and recycled within the department. I don't recall if that's the way we set it up. It seems that way. And if so, I was just curious on the collection side where we were on that.
Steve, if you want me to answer.
Yeah, we'll get you the information. I don't have off the top of my head, I don't have what the VBR collection amounts were, but we can get that for you.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? Okay, Mr. Lash, please know that you have been added on, I know, at least 13 individuals speed dial. And as spring approaches, I'm sure we'll get to know one another so much better. So any other questions or comments? I'm looking, I do not. Yes, sir. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Lash, and we look forward to working with you. And as I said to a few of the other departments, Not sure how information is disseminated amongst your ranks, but please let them know that, especially for us as council people that are kind of dealing on the front line with folks, that we really appreciate the work they do, and sometimes making our jobs, I don't want to say more palatable, but making our jobs more effective and making us be folks can really give some good promises to our people. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All righty. Thanks so much. All right, let's move on. And we are going to be going now into public service.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Budget Committee, and members of Council. My name is Chris Luddle. I think I know all of you obviously very well. I'd like to first thank John Valley. He's helped us out in the last year. But I really want to give a big shout out to Francie Lash. He's done so much for us in the last year in both departments, service and with neighborhoods. So his presentation, obviously, he's very well versed with only a year in, but he's done a fantastic job. And I'd like to introduce, most of you know, the new Deputy Service Director, Jim Aiken. He's on the call with us today. We welcome him. He brings 30 plus years with city experience, which he's going to be a big help to us. So I'd like to welcome him. So what I want to start out with is just what happened a year ago. When we had these hearings, I mean, we kind of heard about COVID and this, but things have changed so much. And in service, what we saw was a collaboration, not only amongst our own departments, but across the city, whether it was human resources or finance or purchasing, public safety especially. So the mayor called a few of us together, and first thing was, if we have to furlough people, and we don't like to use, I mean, we did furlough people, but no one lost any pay. They got to use whatever time they had. They never lost their health care. We didn't lay anybody off. I mean, that was the mayor's vision, is we're going to protect our employees at the highest level, but we are not going to hurt them financially. So that was a vision by him and by us. So when we talked about what do we need to provide for our residents in Akron, and obviously it was, we have to provide water. We have to, we have to keep the sewers flowing. We have to pick the trash up. Now we knew with sports and outside fields, we're going to be limited. So some of our park staff was furloughed, and all this was done to keep our employees safe, to practice the social distancing. We got to a point where it was a lot more economical to put 4 employees in a crew cab truck and go fix potholes. Well, now it's like you can't have more than 1 in a truck. So we borrowed equipment from other departments. We kept 1 person in the truck. People that worked inside the plants worked by themselves. And one thing that was, when we stopped the bulk pickup and people were home, guess what they did? They cleaned out their basement, they cleaned out their garage. And, 311 will tell you the biggest call volume in late May was, when are you going to start bulk pickup? Well, the reason why we stopped was to protect our employees. I mean, if you and I are standing across from a stove, it's kind of hard to be 6 foot apart and not breathe on each other, even though we had the PPE. So when I talk about PPE, our service department did a fantastic job, not only helping other departments, but mostly helping public safety. You heard about N95 masks that were 50 cents before COVID was even mentioned. Then they were going to $5 and people were black marketing them. Well, guess what? We had over 300 in stock at the water department. They went right to fire. I mean, immediately. Okay. And our staff out there, they started searching their vendors to try to get as much PPE into the city as possible. And fire, and police. I mean, when you're using a mask over and over, and all of a sudden we give them 300, and then we find more. I mean, they were looking at body shops for air respirators. They did a fantastic job, and finance did a fantastic job giving us the money, to provide that for our.
I believe we lost you there for a moment.
Chris,
yeah, Chris.
Yeah. we'll just leave it at that, where he said finance did a fantastic job.
How convenient.
Yeah.
Folks really have worked together this past year,
We
haven't
did.
you?
We absolutely did. That was a, and we were kind of making it up as we went along. That was obviously unprecedented, for any of us going through something like that. And, we did our best.
Yeah. Amazing what can be accomplished when no one cares who gets the credit. So I think that's a common theme we've heard throughout the day. Do we have Chris back with us yet?
We do not yet.
Okay. Okay, well, I tell you what, let's give it just another 30 seconds or so before we would step away, because I believe this is our last presentation of the day, and obviously it's an important presentation. So in the meantime, we'll take requests here. What would you like to hear, folks? So we'll okay. Someone needs to mute. There we go. Okay.
Here he comes. He's joining the meeting again.
Okay, very good.
It'll take just a second for him to connect to audio. Thanks for your patience, everyone.
Chris, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I dropped the connection on my computer.
Yeah. Well, according to Mr. Fricker, the last thing you were doing was praising finance.
Right. I hate Zoom.
Yeah. Chris breaking up real bad and freezing up. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'll tell you what. I've got a better internet connection. I'm going to let it front last.
Chris, do you want to try the call-in number and not appear on video?
Yeah, Chris, we can just go with audio only and skip the video unless you have a presentation we need to see. You want to just call in, we'll just go with audio.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Where the hell's the call-in number? Oh, boy. Hold on. Sorry about that.
No, we can still hear you,
pretty
Chris.
good now if you want.
We can hear you well, so you want to continue.
Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Maybe that'll be better. So anyway, when we talk about engineering, they met with all the contractors. They were continue to work. So we had to continue to inspect the work. And engineering, one of their goals in 2020 was to continue to meet all the requirements in the consent decree that was signed in 2014 and meet all the EPA mandates for the long-term control plan. So we continued with all the projects going on in the engineering department. And also what we also did in engineering, when we look at the airport, we bid the 725 rehab project, a couple, and removed the 19. So that's underway. The highlights in the consent decree was the Hazel Storage Basin was placed into service. The Ohio Canal Interceptor Tunnel, that was put into service in June. The WRF Biosep project is ongoing at the plant. The Headworks project is ongoing at the wastewater plant. The Main Street Corridor Phase 1 is near completion. You still see First Energy still doing a lot of infrastructure improvements, but that is 90% complete. And then we did complete design of the South Hawkins resurfacing, the East Market resurfacing, the Elizabeth Park, 4th Street, Ascot Parkway, Chestnut Ridge Walking Path, Cadillac Park, the Canton Market intersection, which will start here shortly, the US 224 Maslin Road intersection, the Stuber Street Bridge replacement, and currently ongoing is the Main Street Phase 2 project. Akron Waterways renewed.
its request, we have ongoing negotiations. We basically have 2 large projects left in the consent decree. So we are in negotiations right now with the integrative plan to not only reduce the cost of the overall project, but with the leveraging the Ohio Canal Interceptor Tunnel, we feel like we will show there'll be, without harm to the environment, we'll be able to eliminate the high rate treatment facility at the end of the tunnel, which in the consent decree, the estimate on that project alone is $100 million. So of the consent decree, there was 27 major projects. 23 have either been completed or are in operation, and then we only have 2 left in the whole project. The AWR program, through the rain barrel program, they distributed 184 rain barrels, even though the Blue Heron was a virtual event last year. Engineering staff participated in the following committees: the Akron Area Engineering Week Committee, Cauga River Area of Concern, the Cauga River River Trail, Gorge Dam Project Coordination Team, Gorge Dam Stakeholder Committee, Hands-on State Sustainability Conference, the NEFCO Environmental Resource Technical Advisory Committee, Summit County Environmental Sustainability Task Force, Summit of Sustainability Alliance, and the Committee for Future Civil Engineers. Going on to building maintenance. They administered the security upgrade out at the Municipal Service Center last year. They worked on, they did in-house, we did an upgrade to the Copley Road facility where we upgrade the lights to LED. This year, we're going to look in building maintenance to continue the upgrades to the parking deck control system. And then we are going to administer the replacement of the Firestone Park Community Center. Highway Division, we are going to bid and award the resurfacing project again. With COVID, we reduced the project last year because of funding. We didn't know what was going to happen to our budget. So we only paved around 36 miles of roads. This year's project has already began. Some of the the streets are being milled for pavement next week. And I could tell you, we have never started the project this early, but with this year's program, we look to pave over 70 miles of roads. And that's not including the projects that engineering are going to do with Hawkins, with parts of Manchester Road and parts of West Market. So those are extra paving jobs that will be done this year. Also what we're going to do in highway, we will be implementing and installing the speed tables in each ward. Those were worked with OID. They picked the locations, working with traffic engineering and Akron Police Department. So those areas were identified, and we are going to install those with our own staff. We also will continue with our supervisory staff. We will train our employees that do not have CDLs, and we continue to work on that program. And then also in highway, I'd like to mention, when we talk about snow and ice, and snow and ice is not only highway, it's street cleaning, it's parks, building maintenance, and a big part of that is our motor equipment, keeping all the trucks running. Our highest snowfall total this year for one day was on Christmas Day. We had a little over 7 inches in one day. And I could tell you, people want to be home with their families. But when you talk about working on a holiday, we did a fantastic job on that day. And not only that, in between, they had to decon, wipe down the truck. So when they got in it, they cleaned it themselves. And when they got out after a 12-hour shift, they cleaned it again. And then a new person, they cleaned it themselves. So it was a fantastic group effort from all departments. Snow and ice was definitely a challenge this year. But I think all in all, we did a fantastic job. Parks maintenance, they're going to convert, they're going to change one of the baseball fields at Patterson Park Community Center to a soccer field with all the high requests of soccer on North Hill. They are going to continue to work on Joy Park. They are going to continue to work on better ways to storage at our triplet garage. They are helping sanitation and rolling into sanitation. Parks help implement a citywide, now that we're going citywide on our trash collection, and we did that in February, working with sanitation. Parks help optimize the routes and work with them. And you're going to see some of the routes in your wards change because Republic picked up a little piece of a neighborhood on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, obviously, and Friday. Now we're going to get more efficient, and some of the people's will change on what day they pick up trash, but it'll be a more efficient system instead of, because there's part of North Hill on Monday or all of Monday, and then maybe part of West Akron on Monday, because that's what Republic did. Now maybe West Akron will move to like a Wednesday, but we'll keep each neighborhood. There'll be a little bit of overlap, so you won't have trucks in different parts of the city on the same day.
Chris, is that the reason for, excuse me, is that the reason that we're showing an increase of 8 employees in sanitation?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
Yes.
great.
Picking up, yes. And motor equipment, we're trying, it's really tough to hire certified mechanics, so we're trying to get more of our interns. We did lack that in all divisions, Mike, as far as the high school students that we hiring. So we're working with them to get more high school students to work a half a day in all divisions, water, sewer, motor equipment, and then after they graduate, we work with them to get their commercial driver's license, and we'll be able to hire them. We've been very successful with that program. So we continue to work on that as a service. The administration at Public Works, Jim Hall and his staff, just did a fantastic job when it come to the deconning and the COVID things. His team searched what chemical was best to use. We actually worked with fire right away. We were looking at, we bought paint sprayers, we bought defoggers, we put the chemical in. So the Public Works Division was going in and deconning every police car every night. They were deconning fire stations. They were deconning the med units for the staff as they came back. Now we're starting to transition away from that, and the public safety people are doing their own decon of their own equipment. But we worked with them on what equipment they needed to be more efficient and what chemical that needed also to do those things. So that was a big shout out to Public Works. As I mentioned, they started picking up in February. Now we're picking up 100% of the city. But last year, one of their goals was to continue the recycling, reducing our contamination and recycling. And they did a fantastic job. And it all goes to education. Okay, it all goes about what can and what cannot go in the can. So sanitation worked with Keep Akron Beautiful. We called it Feet on the Street, and we inspected these cans, and then we educated the residents, and it's shown we've shown great strides in reducing our recycle contamination citywide. And now we didn't do much in the Republic area, but we're going to do that this spring. And then lastly, street cleaning. Street cleaning completed another full round of leaves by the end of the year, which was fantastic. Mother Nature had something to do with that. We had a pretty good December. So we were able to get through every ward, and then we went back through, I think, 3 or 4 wards. This year, for some reason, it was one of our highest cubic yard pickup of leaves. I don't know if I think part of it was we had such a dry year, and then we had a dry fall, which made sewer very happy. Jim could testify, because when we have a wet fall and those leaves get down the sewers, especially in the combined sewer areas, they end up at the plant. We have dumpster after dumpster. So they did a fantastic job getting all those leaves up and our goal for next year is obviously to get another full round in before the end of the year. So moving on to water, real quick on water, Jeff was talking to other operators. And there's only so many certified operators in the state. We had other municipalities calling us and say, if our employees get sick, can we borrow some of your operators? And we talked about it, and we would help them if we could, but we were really apprehensive of letting any of our employees go, because what if our employees got sick? So Jeff, talking with Cincinnati, we actually rented some RVs. And I don't know if you knew this or not, but we rented RVs. We put them up at the plant up in Kent. We asked our employees, would they volunteer? And we had employees volunteer, and 4 employees would go in these RVs. They would spend 12 hours in the RV, and then they would come and work 12 hours. They stayed away from their families for 2 weeks. And this rotated. We did this rotation, and I can't say enough, because we didn't know what was going to happen with this virus. If you get sick, how contagious is it? So they agreed to do that, and we did that on a rotation. And it's a real testament to not only Jeff and his supervisors and his staff, but all the way down the line, what our employees did just to make sure we could keep that was lab analysts and that was operators up at the plant. So, Jeff wants to continue maintaining, a very high quality of water to meet EPA standards. But as you know, and we talked about this before, this was one of our lowest lead levels ever in our system. And I think this came because we've collaborated with Akron U. We have done a lot of work with optimizing our corrosion control system. And this is all between our employees and some of the staff at Akron U to implement a quality chemical treatment program. It's not only reduced cost, but it's proved benefits to our water and the quality of our water. The algal blooms was one of the lowest ever. I mean, they were hitting this thing when it was hitting our front door. So with COVID, part of that was we could get on these calls. They would meet twice a week, whether they were at Akron U or they were at our plant, or some of them were working from home, to all work together to put this program in. And a big thing in water this year, as you know, is we're going to implement the new meters program. So every one of our customers are going to get a new meter. So it is a challenge. We're starting to work on a plan. Thank goodness the vaccines are going out and people may be getting a little more comfortable, but we have the proper PPE. We will have the proper protocol to get into these homes and change out their meter. And at the end of the day, it's going to be so much better for the customer. They will build in gallons. They won't be building HCF, and we don't have to go through all that. But that's one of the things that's really big this year. Water distribution, they fixed 264 main breaks last year. So they were out there. Another 2,000 hydrants were painted. We flushed 10,000 hydrants. So the work did not stop. And last year was one of the highest years of lead service replacement. We replaced 257 lead services to our residential customers. So to give a little sense of that, before Mayor Horgan, this has been a big charge for Mayor Horgan. Since he came in, 910 lead services have been restored with copper. So we have about 4,000 left to do. But what also Water's doing is applying for grants, getting principal forgiveness. We said this a couple months ago to council that they went out and got grants for $2 million to replace lead services in 2021. That was dollars they went after. That's not going to be added to any ratepayer. That's going to be another $2 million. It'll go right in the program to replace lead services in 2021. So, and last but not least, sewer, always at the end of the pipe, sewer, one of the biggest things was when the Ohio Canal Interceptor Tunnel went into service, they effectively operated and maintained this to eliminate overflows in the Cauga River. One thing, and there's close to $100 million worth of construction going down at the wastewater plant. So they're replacing the pipe across all the flow that comes across the river. That's getting replaced. A new bridge is getting set. A new headworks building is getting built. So as the influent comes in, it'll go through the headworks building, all new screens to remove a lot more grit, a lot more of the solids. And then at the end of the plant, we are expanding from 220 million gallons to 280 million gallons per day. We'll have that capacity with the Bioset project. With that being said, in 2020, accomplished was unbelievable that we reduced the overflows, which when we call secondary bypass, the optimization, operation, and control of secondary treatment resulted in the highest percentage of influent flow, 99.9% to receive full treatment in the history of the facility. So that meant almost 99.9% of flow coming in the plant received full secondary treatment at the end of the pipe. It more than sufficed the EPA requirements. So by doing that, the operation is to maintain the plant, the collection system, in a manner eligible for Gold Award, which means no effluent violations from NACWA. So that's our goals. With that, I'll take any questions. But then again, I just can't give our staff from the top to bottom the job they did in 2020.
Wow. Okay, I'm going to jump out right now, and I'm assuming on my screen. Yes.
That was an excellent report given by our director, but I want to thank Mrs. Donnell. She made me aware. We do have a golf course operation as well. That's in your budget. And I want to just highlight that for just a few quick facts. In 2020, one of our goals was to take over the snack bar and to better accommodate our customers, and was a revenue opportunity for the city. We were able to successfully do that. In addition to that, we were able to obtain a liquor license for the snack bar as a point of sale, which actually helped increase our customer satisfaction, so to speak, at the golf course. So we took advantage of that, and we were successful. We also were able to hire a great staff, even in the midst of COVID. And we actually are seeing increased revenue opportunities as a result of that. So I just wanted to actually highlight that and thank Mrs. Donnell for her assistance earlier with this report. And one of the goals that the golf course does have is to produce over 40,000 rounds of golf for 2021, and to continue to make that a place, a go-to place for the residents of the city of Akron. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let me go out to council members that have raised their hand, and I'll begin with Mr. Neal, and then we'll go with Mr. Lombardo, and then to Mr. Mallett. Mr. Neal, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was on mute when Mr. Lash gave his report. I do want to extend my gratitude to him and his department, and Mr. Greger, Ms. Kathy Graves, that whole group that services us. This is in regards to the PR piece. That was phenomenal what Mr. Luddle shared. Have we already been highlighting some of those stories? Because I'm asking this from a PR standpoint for council. A lot of complaints I've gotten have been with residents not knowing like when to put out their cans, when to bring them back, and other things for a shared cost and to reduce costs for PR. If not, I would suggest that we partner in getting that information out, and at the same time highlighting the accomplishment of our employees for a cost-saving measure, because I don't think we have a budget. I know you guys push stuff out through the water bills. That's just a suggestion. I appreciate the city taking over the sanitation, because there were a lot of complaints in the past. As soon as we have the numbers, can we find out if that is a break even, if there's something that we're losing, or is it a revenue generator? Because there was a reason why we farmed that out in the beginning. And now that we've taken it back in, as soon as we have those numbers, that would be good to know. And then this is something I'd like for us to do a study on. And this is in this holistic re-governing piece from a financial side. If we have an idea of what the curb service cost us, by that I mean when we have to go out, take a resident's can from their house to the curb and take it back out, as well as when we provide the service after we plow, when we go out, we shovel out the front of their drive. There's a method to the madness. I'd like for us to have that study as we look at how to better holistic and serve our community. That comes into, if we find money for the community ambassador standpoint, that could partner with our service department as well as with our public safety department and services our community. That's why I'm asking for those numbers, please. I don't know if that would come from you, Mr. Lash, or from Mr. Luddle. I don't know if my question makes sense.
I just want to clarify, when you talk about CURD service, are you talking about like the medical waiver employees where
Yes,
we
sir.
get out of the truck and go get the, okay, I just
Yes,
want to make
sir.
sure.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I don't know if we know how much that adds to the cost of servicing our clientele and how many we have in total. But as we look at a new way of holistically servicing our community, if we can know what that cost is, we may be able to defer that to community ambassadors who will be responsible for an area to do that and save some money and underwrite that service. I want to know that. Along with, again, just understanding if we're making money, losing money, or breaking even now that we brought sanitation back in. And then,
Well, let me address that one real quick.
Yes, sir.
If you've ever dealt with Mr. Fricker, we weren't going to be able to do it unless we had a good business case. So we worked on this for over a year.
That's
he wasn't going to just do it because we wanted to take over the whole city. Okay.
Okay.
He's pretty a tough nut, that guy. And we went through some hard numbers. But one of the things too is we got a lot of negative complaints when it comes to the other company, broken wheels, broken lids, missed trash. When we take the number of complaints every week, that was a big driver too. But going back to Mr. Fricker, we had to show a good business case, optimizing our system. And obviously, you're in business. When you get somebody new, they might give you a pretty decent price and think, oh man, well, when that contract's up, then that contract, guess what? Their costs keep going up, up and up and up. And all of a sudden now it's a better business case if we do it ourselves. Absolutely.
Excellent. Because I didn't know, do we have to buy new trucks? Are we leasing those trucks?
We did buy some new vehicles, yes. Yep.
Okay.
But that was all built in the business case.
Okay. That's excellent to know. That's excellent to know. I didn't hear it, but is the steam plant now making money, or was that in your report, or is that in another report?
That's not in my report, but we've been working on some updating that. When we say about making money, we are not subsidizing the steam plant. Okay, we continue to reinvest, and as you know, we had a couple big COPS allocations in the recent past, and we are continuing to optimize that. But one thing we have done with that staff is we have gone in and tried to optimize our buildings. Okay, how do we maximize their staff and our staff together to make our buildings the highest efficiency we can with the equipment in them? Obviously, Station 4 and Station 2 are new. Those are easy, okay? But when you look at some of these old buildings, what can we do to increase the efficiencies of those systems? And it might be just putting a control system in and letting that thermostat set back at night if nobody's in there, or churn up in the summertime. So that's what they've been helping. We're going to bring a presentation to you. We're still not complete with everything that we're going to do, but one thing they have leveraged with the big upgrade to downtown, with all the new steam lines and chilled water extensions, the Mayflower was on steam, but it had its own air conditioning system. Okay, that is now going to be on our chilled water. The Canal Park Ball Stadium, when it was built, had 47 heat pumps. That's now going to go on our chilled water. And what this not only does with the efficiency, it reduces greenhouse gases immensely, okay? With a lot less electricity they're using and what it takes for us to generate that refrigeration for those chilled water systems. So it's quite a big presentation, and we are going to come to council and show you those things. But one thing we did tell you is we are going to, when we built that plant, there's a lot of systems that were the system was a high temperature, high pressure system. And we found they don't need that high pressure. So we're going to a lower pressure, but when we generate steam at a high pressure, we have to reduce it. And we're reducing it through a turbine generator. And we're looking at this right now where we think we can generate enough electricity with our steam where we will be neutral at that plant. But there again, this is really in the infant stuff. We're going to bring you a presentation, but it's just a lot to get into today.
Okay, well, thank you. Just a couple more, Mr. Chairman. I heard the part about students being in the service department.
Yes.
Can we, as councilmen, know, especially those of us that have high schools in our ward, so that we can make sure that students from our ward get a chance to participate in that, please? And then last two, the neighborhood assistance contracts, I don't know where they are. Again, from a standpoint of holistically and empowering the community, if we can look at having more resident neighborhood contractors cutting those lawns, and I'd appreciate that. I don't know where those contracts are. And then last but not least, the meters that are being put in. I know if anyone has apprehension of having a meter put in, the fees are exorbitant on what they have to pay if they want to stay with the meter that they have. If we could, I'll get those numbers later, but cost-wise, I don't know why.
I'm not sure what you mean. They have to stay with the meter they have.
If they choose not to go with the 5G meter that they read.
Yeah. You mean electric?
The
Water meter.
The water meters. Thank you.
No, the
Thank
water
you.
meters, we're not giving them a choice. Our current system is a drive-by system. So they're going to get a new meter, no cost to them.
Yeah,
This is not.
Maybe I was misreading something. I thought if they wanted to stay with their meter, then there was a very high, almost like a $20-something a month.
No, that's not our system.
Okay, I'll go back and check my notes. That's good to
Okay.
hear. I'm glad. Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Mr. Chair, I wanted to pass along a request from the administration that asks if Councilman Neal can please submit his requests in writing to Mr. Luddle.
Okay, very good. Mr. Neal, did you pick up on that?
I did. I know there was some question with us with this being a public meeting, that information be made public. I can't write my request too, because I'm reading it off a list. But I know since it's Zoom, people are asking that those answers be public too, but I can do that. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, I think next hand was Mr. Lombardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, to Mr. Luddle and his staff, thank you for everything that you've done in your department, because we certainly rely on you. My question first is going to start off with an assumption. So, we have 10 wards and 5 days a week. So I'm going to assume we do trash pickup, 2 wards a day. How many trucks go out per ward? Are they the same trucks that then go out on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday? And that said, are we having to budget? I know you just mentioned some new vehicles. So do we buy a new vehicle every year? Like, what's the lifespan of a sanitation truck?
I'll get you that information. I don't want to, but we did buy some new vehicles, and it is the same truck. So typically the same driver will have the same route. So he's familiar or she's familiar with that route, and she'll have a route on Monday. Maybe it's North Hill, then Tuesday it's another ward, then Wednesday, then Thursday, then Friday. And then that's sanitation. Then recycling is the same way. So it's, we talked one time, maybe we should go to recycling every other week. Well, what do you do with those employees on the off weeks? There's a lot of people that, so we've looked at a lot of these different optimization things, ways to save money, but I'll get you those numbers. If you send me those questions, Phil, I'll get those answered by sanitation.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, let's see Mr. Malik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, Mr. Luddle, for the presentation. Obviously, Service Department had a huge role in making sure that the city was able to deliver those essential services during COVID. So definitely kind of echo Mr. Freeman's point. I think that hopefully we can continue to tell these stories so that, you know, I think they're really something special, I think really for Akron's history going forward. Just 2 points I wanted to make with regard to sanitation. Just wanted to speak very highly in favor of, you know, the routes being picked up from the contractor and the additional employees here in the budget. I think, Mr. Little, you were being a little bit charitable, but there were obviously many complaints with the contractor. And so I think that that's going to be a really positive aspect for all city residents. And then the only second point I wanted to make was I know service has been part of the ongoing speed table discussions. Obviously, we'll be doing the implementation. So I kind of appreciate the collaboration there. And I hope that that's something where going forward, we can move to having those be permanent installations. I know that you know, is a more complicated question, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Looking to see if I have any other council members with their hands up. I do not see anything. Chris, how long ago has it been we were up to Toledo?
Oh, Mike, yeah. Yeah, Mr. Freeman and I drove up to Toledo and Jim Hall, and we're going to look at their speed tables, and we're thinking we're going to see this big scientific thing and how they lay them out in the streets. They take us in this back room or this back thing, and they got these 2x4s nailed together, and I'm thinking, oh my, you know,
oh my,
really scientific here.
Well,
I'm
Chris,
so glad we didn't take any engineer staff up there, Mike.
They would have had heart attacks. So, you know what? This morning I got up, got myself a glass of water, didn't think about you. Flushed my toilet, didn't think about you. My garbage got picked up here last Thursday morning. You didn't even come into my mind. But we know that the work that you all do, it affects us every day. And
It's
and
very
you know, we
special. Well, I'm really glad you didn't think of me when you flushed your toilet.
Well, just, you know, just making the point that there's so much that we depend upon. I mean, day by day, moment by moment, and we never give it a second thought. And you know, somebody once asked me, you know, what's it like being a council person? I said, you know, for the most part, folks are good. They want their water to come on. They want their toilet to flush. They want their trash to be picked up. And if you folks fall down as council people, our phone's going to start ringing real quick. Everybody will agree with that. So,
you know, you're only as good as the people working for you, and we have great staff and service. So
absolutely. So, yeah, and again, I don't know how you do it, Chris, but express City Council's gratitude. I don't know if you do that, you know, disseminate the information to your managers or just how, but do let them know that even though we might not recognize everything moment by moment, we appreciate all that they do.
When you guys support us on Mondays, that's that's enough, you know, just trains running. Thank you so much.
So, hey, I did have one question. How in the world did we get to resurfacing so early in the year?
Well, the contractor that had was low bid last year. When we pulled back, because we didn't know what was going to happen in the budget, and when things started looking better, the asphalt plants had already closed. So they agreed to hold their price. So the stuff they're doing now is pretty much carryover from 2020. So we haven't bid the other project. We'll be bringing that to you real soon, which is some of the concrete stuff. So they opened their plant this week with the warm temperatures in the forecast. So they start milling some streets, I believe, in Ward 5 this week.
Okay. Yeah,
So
that's what threw
happened.
me when it threw me when I saw the list. I thought, I didn't know the plants were open yet. So, okay. Are there any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Freeman, can I introduce? I'd like to take a moment just to introduce myself. Jim Aiken.
Right. Oh, yes, Jim.
Yeah, I just like to introduce myself. I've been with the city for over 30 years in sewer, and I believe over the past 15 years, I may have talked to each and every individual of you fine folks, either by phone, text, email, with sewer issues, plugged inlets, caved in streets, all of the above. But it's been a pleasure working with you and hope to continue on this side. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you very, very much. And we look forward to, we've known you, but we look forward to even more interaction with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. If we have nothing else to come before us, thanks to each and every person that was a guest with us today. Thank you to all of our council members for your good questions. And tomorrow we're going to pick up, and tomorrow we're going to be covering, I believe, Mr. Pricker, law, finance, and health. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Very, very good. And with that, we will adjourn at 5:24. We'll see everybody tomorrow at 3 p.m. Thank you for your participation.
Thank you.
Thank you.